Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Pedro Torres. Oops. I'm Portuguese and I'm consider myself an agile geek. That's why I took tons of certifications. Currently I'm working as a volunteer at IPMA Young Crew Portugal, and I work also...
Hey, this is not a test, this is rock and roll! Time to rock it from the Delta to the DMZ!
And I work also as a Scrum Master at Farfetch. And these are the companies that I've worked before working at Farfetch. This is my bot. Don't ask me why, but probably...
This is rock and roll! Time to rock it from the Delta to the DMZ! That sounds like that was
Okay. Querem que eu dance? Querem que eu faça uma dançazinha? Não. Ok. Acho que já passou. É só começar a falar de novo. Okay, so first of all, we are going to see a video. And just for you guys to have a hunch if you think this is pair programming or not, if the video works, okay? So fingers crossed. Okay. So this is something from NCIS. I don't know if you see the TV show. This was a couple of years ago. So basically, this kind of pretends it's like a hacking attack or something like that. And the girl seems quite nervous, and then the guy just jumps into the keyboard. They look like they are playing ZX Spectrum or something like that. I don't know, beats me. So there are two of them, so they kind of make a pair, right? So it almost fits the description. Then you have a guy eating a sandwich. Yeah, it's probably the Scrum Master. And then, ta-da! All attacks basically can be defended by an old guy holding the plug. Okay, that's how stupid this is. If you want to see the video, you can go to YouTube and search for two idiots on keyboard, okay, and you'll find the video. So this is definitely not pair programming, okay? Don't think that it's like two guys on the same keyboard. Okay, so a little bit of background. Not very boring. So pair programming, as you can see here, is one of the extreme programming practices. Extreme programming is a little bit like Scrum, but cooler, because besides all the iterations and all that stuff, it prescribes some cool practices like test-driven development, refactoring, pair programming, continuous integration, and so on. So basically, what is pair programming? Pair programming is quite basic. Basically, it's like two guys on the same workstation doing one task at a time. They can have two monitors, they can have two keyboards, two mice. It's completely optional, but the idea here is two people working on the same task at a time on a single computer, okay? So one of them is a driver, okay? So it's the guy that is writing the code. So let's say I'm with my colleague, I am coding, okay? So I'm responsible for doing the code, while the other guy is navigator. So he's reviewing the code, he's giving me tips, basically he's pointing me to the right direction, okay? So one guy is coding, and the other guy is doing the code review on the go. So this is, to me, is one of the big advantages, because instead of, let's say, code for a full week and then having like a code review with the team, in pair programming you have the chance to review on the spot and probably come up with better ideas than just one person doing the code, okay? So probably you think, okay, this sounds a little bit boring because, okay, one guy is having fun, he's coding, but the other guy is code reviewing, okay? No one wants to code review the full day, right? Sounds really boring because you guys are developers, you like to develop. So the secret of pair programming effectively is to switch the roles multiple times a day, okay? So let's say I'm with my friend. I'll code a class. He's reviewing it. Then we'll change, and he's coding a class. Or let's say I code in the morning, he codes in the afternoon. The secret here is to rotate the roles multiple times a day. Otherwise, people will get bored, will get disengaged, and pair programming will suck for sure, okay? So you should switch roles multiple times a day. And you'll have some cool tricks to do that effectively. So quiz time, okay? We are more or less good audience, so let's do a quiz. So I brought a couple of scenarios here. We have scenario A, scenario B, C, and D. And let's see in which scenario basically the guys are pair programming, okay? So in scenario A, you have two guys working, but they have two workstations, right? So they are not pair programming besides staying next to each other, okay? So they are definitely not pair programming. These two guys here, so they are doing the same task for sure, okay? They just have one computer. So in theory, they are doing pair programming, okay? But let's say that they are not, because I don't want no one in the office doing that stuff, okay? So they are not doing pair programming. That guy over there, at least he's looking to the other computer, okay? So it seems like both are working on the same task, but they have two computers, so they are not pair programming as well. And finally, these two gentlemen over here, as you can see, one workstation, one guy pointing to the monitor, okay? They seem both engaged in one task. This is pair programming, okay? Cool? Forget about this one, please. Okay, so what about workstation configurations? You have tons of configurations that you can do. The trick here is to make sure that you are comfortable enough, because two guys on the same workstation, you must stand next to each other. It's not that comfortable like you having your own space. So this is probably the worst setup that you can have. But to be honest, to do pair programming, you just need a workstation, one monitor, one keyboard. That's it, done. You can have two keyboards. So the difference here is, when you have a keyboard, some teams like to do it because when you're passing the keyboard, it's like you're officially switching the role between the driver and navigator. But you can also have like two keyboards to be more comfortable and just code while you agree with your partner when you want to switch roles. This to me is definitely the secret. So this is the best configuration, because when you have two monitors, you can mirror the monitors. So both of you are standing in a comfortable position and seeing the same code. So you have two monitors, you're seeing the same stuff. Don't use it like, okay, I'm coding here and I'm seeing some Stack Overflow over there. It doesn't work that well. So you should mirror or clone both monitors. It works quite great. And the last configuration is having two keyboards. This is completely optional, okay? But the two monitors, to me, that really does a trick. Okay, so one question that people asked me was, okay, so let's say that I'm pairing with someone that he is from England or so, and is not used to my keyboard. How can we do it? Well, basically, to tackle multicultural barriers, what I advise you is, okay, if you're Portuguese and you're in England, just get used to the English keyboard. That's it, done. No more trouble. Or just try to have two keyboards, one with each language, and have some kind of hotkey, some shortcut to switch the keyboard layout on your operating system, just to make sure that both of you are comfortable with your own keyboard. Okay, so when should you pair? Does it make sense to pair all day? Should you pair just in some certain tasks? There is no right and wrongs in this question. I am of the opinion that yes, you should pair all the time. Because if you think about it, you're probably going to waste more time trying to decide if a task needs pairing than probably just coding stuff. So in my opinion, you should pair every time you're in front of the computer. Because basically it's like, okay, I'm getting rid of one workstation. We have just one workstation per pair. No more troubles, no more questions. It works much better that way. Obviously, if you go to a meeting, you don't need to pair. Although, if you're pair programming and someone goes to a meeting, the pair kind of becomes incomplete, okay, because I'm not pairing while I'm working. That is fine, but I kind of like to have the pair going to the meeting, because in that way, people understand they are stopping two people from getting the work done instead of one, okay? And obviously, if you go to the bathroom, you don't need to pair as well, okay? So, benefits of pair rotation. Well, first of all, the collective code ownership. So, if you're working alone, you have your own code, you're coding a feature, it kind of just belongs to you. You're the only guy that knows exactly what's happening over there. And if you're working with someone, two guys know exactly what's happening, okay? So you kind of double the coverage of knowledge. So this to me is really important because if you go on vacation, if you are sick at home, you'll have much more people working on the same code base than just one guy that is the person that knows something about your application and nobody else does, okay? Well, pair programming also helps the buzz factor. Do you know what the buzz factor is? No? So basically the buzz factor is how many people from your team a bus will need to hit in order for you to lose knowledge. Okay, so let's say if you have just one guy that understands one feature, then your buzz factor is 1, right? Because if that guy is sick at home or gets run over by a bus, you lose that knowledge. That's it, no one knows exactly what's happening. If, let's say, that you have the whole team working on the same code, then your buzz factor increases by the amount of your team, okay? The size of your team. And obviously, in pair programming, you also have the beginner's mind. Why? Because besides switching roles multiple times a day, like I told you, you can switch pairs during the week, which means that instead of having 2 guys working on the same code, you can actually have 3 or 4 guys because you're rotating the pairs, which means that every time someone arrives new to the code, he's going to ask a couple of questions like, okay, so why did you do this like you did? Why didn't you code some other way around? That's what we call the beginner's mind, something that arrives fresh, asks a lot of questions. So this is really good, not only for the guy that knows to explain, but also to the guy that doesn't know to learn, okay? You can actually have some helpful tools like this. This is a pair rotation ladder. So basically what this does is every time someone forms a pair, you just write it down, okay? You make a mark. And for instance, with this, we know, for instance, that Rose and Van, they already paired 3 times, Henry and Steve 2 times. This is not like micromanagement, but it's just like a good tool to understand that everybody is pairing with each other and that everybody is rotating properly instead of just staying with the same partners. Okay? This is completely optional, by the way. So one of the questions that the majority of the people do is, okay, so if I'm pair programming, one of the guys already reviewing, why do I need code reviews? In my opinion, you don't. Okay? It's a little bit overkill. Because if you already have someone reviewing the code every single day, why do you need, like in the end of the week, more code reviews? So if the code review is just for the team, I would say no, don't do it. If it is cross-team, let's say for the whole department to understand what you're doing, then I think that's fine. But like the regular code review for the team doesn't make a lot of sense. So as you can imagine, when you are in a team, all of us have completely different personalities. And it is obviously quite important for us to work and understand how everybody works in the team. When you're pairing, that issue becomes even more important because you're pairing with someone, you're sharing your work, and you really must understand exactly the guy that you're sharing your work with and try to understand how you can communicate with them and all that sort of stuff. So you have a couple of personalities that I brought here today, and just let's take a look at them and see the pros and cons, okay? Well, so first of all, you have the rockstar. When you're pairing with a rockstar, okay, it's that kind of guy that knows exactly everything. He's really, really good on his stuff. But usually, and I say usually, they have that kind of God complex. They are not that tolerant to explain everything to juniors. So pairing with a rockstar, it's not usually very good. It's okay because you're going to build some awesome features, that's for sure. But you're not going to learn that much. And if you're reviewing his code, let's say, okay, you just arrived to the team, and you're reviewing a code of someone really senior, like this kind of rock star, it's a little bit tricky because it's not that eager or it's not going to welcome that much your reviews, so it's not that nice. Then you have the newbie. I love that shirt, by the way. So a newbie is basically someone that arrives to the team, someone new. And pair programming is really, really, really important in these sort of situations because, well, at least in my previous experience, when someone arrives to the team and you're not doing pair programming, what you usually do is you grab some manual, throw it into the new guy, and say, look, read the manual like 10 times, then go to this code that no one really cares about and take a look at him, and after a month we'll talk about that stuff. In pair programming, what I usually see is someone, as soon as he arrives, he starts pairing with someone with a lot of experience. So from someone that just arrived in the team, it's really good because he'll start to code in the first week, probably is going to do a lot of commits, probably is going to deploy some code in live. So it's much better for you to put someone up to speed. Okay? Then you have the junior. If you're pairing with a junior, it's really cool because basically you have a lot of chances to teach the guy, to be the mentor, put him up to speed. It's real, if you're the kind of guy that really likes to explain how you do stuff, pairing with the junior is really cool. He's going to learn a lot, so that's pretty awesome. If you're pairing with the senior, that's cool as well. You're going to learn a lot. He's not like a rock star, so he probably would like to mentor you, so that's cool. Then you have soulmates, okay? You're pairing with like the perfect you, the other you. You'll finish each other's lines of code. You have the CVDD guy, okay? I don't know if you guys know what CVDD is. CVDD is the curriculum vitae-driven development. So instead of just sticking to Java or to this or to that, he's just searching for bleeding-edge technology. So it's just like he just wants to look good on LinkedIn. So it's not that good of a pair. And then, last but not least, I need to put Chuck Norris on my presentation, sorry. You have the guy that basically bullies you around and tells you what to do. That's it. That's Chuck Norris. He doesn't take code reviews from no one. What does pairing enables you? Well, first thing, what I usually see in teams that are pairing is they are much more engaged and committed to their work. Okay, sometimes you're working alone, you're getting bored, or you're having some troubles trying to write your lines of code because you don't understand the issue, or you're not finding the best workaround. And when you're pairing, it's much more motivating and engaging because you're having two guys working on the same stuff, okay? I don't know if you do Scrum or not, but what I usually see in teams that are working by themselves, okay, so they are not pairing, when you're in a stand-up, people are just talking to a Scrum Master or to a manager. And obviously you're in a team of 6, and someone is talking, and the rest of the team really doesn't care a lot, because it's like, okay, it's his problems, not mine. I really don't care, I'm just being bored. When you're pairing, this gets much more valuable, because if you're rotating in the middle of the week, let's say, okay, someone is talking on the Monday and Tuesday, and you don't know if on Wednesday you're going to jump to that pair and to that feature. So you're going to listen to that guy with much more attention than when you're working on your own, because you're never going to touch the other guy's code, okay? And then what we already talked about, it's much better to integrate new guys, okay, in the team, because you're pairing, you're working on your very first week of your job instead of just like in a month or so. And basically, all of this leads to less bugs. Yep, that's right. You had tons of studies now that prove that when two guys are working, one coding, the other one reviewing, discussing how you should do stuff, you actually have less bugs. You can Google it if you want. People have more fun. People say that it's more fun to work with someone else than just working on their own. It's cool. You have less distractions. Why? Because if you're working with someone else, you're not going to see Facebook, right? Or you're not going to watch a video because you're working with someone else. You're not going to Slack and see social stuff while you're working with someone else. You have less interruptions because of the stuff that I already told you. So one thing is like a manager going to you and say, hey, I need some estimate and I'm never going to use it, and stop one guy's work. But if you're stopping two guys' work, well, that's the double of the price, right? So people usually tend to let the developers alone. Not forever, but at least they tend to have less interruptions. Less slacking. Okay, so we know that writing tests is boring, writing comments on code is boring. When you're pairing, if you're not really willing to do that stuff, you have the other guy pushing you to say, come on, let's write this test, let's write these lines of comments. So you tend to slack less. And comfort zone-wise, okay, if you have two guys and each one has their comfort zone, their knowledge, their background, if they're working together, obviously you'll have a bigger comfort zone. So let's say if you have a junior and a senior, and the junior is not that comfortable in picking up a hard task, if he's pairing with someone senior, he's going to pick up that task because it's kind of covered with the other guy's knowledge. So this is really cool. And remember the old saying, right? Two heads think better than one. That's it. You're probably going to have better ideas when you're pair programming and going to tackle problems much easier than working by yourself. Okay, so we got to the point of the drawbacks, everything that I told you. Sounds pretty awesome, everything is really sweet, and oh my god, pair programming is like rainbows and unicorns. But it's not, okay? You have some drawbacks, and I don't know if you're familiar with this. So basically you have music over there, and you have like working here and Facebook on the laptop. Forget about these, okay? If you're pairing with someone and someone is code reviewing you, obviously not going to listen to music, right? Otherwise the guy is speaking to you and you simply don't give a damn. It doesn't make sense to listen to music while you're pairing. Or you can share the music, I don't know. But I never saw that stuff. And Facebook, you're not going actually talking to your girlfriend while someone is looking to the monitor, so forget about that one as well. So yeah, that's the hard truth. No music, no social stuff. That's the drawback of pair programming. That's the completely fine. Forget about that stuff. So the question now is, okay, so is pair programming for everyone? No, not really. You must be social. You must be willing to communicate with someone for 8 hours. Remember that. You're working more or less from 9 to 6. So you're going to work with someone next to you. You need to communicate. You need to be social. Someone is going to criticize you, hopefully in a positive way, about your code. So you must be really confident of the stuff that you are doing. So yeah, it's not for everyone. There are people that actually don't like to pair program. But the majority actually does. And in my opinion, I think all of you should give it a try at least. So that's why I think it should never be imposed, okay? In my perspective, it should be highly recommended because it really is beneficial, but you should never make a team pair just because the manager wants that. Doesn't make sense. So now, some frequently asked questions. Remotely, does it work? Yep, it works just fine. You have tons of tools now in the market. You have TeamViewer, you have Skype, Google Hangout. There is no excuse just because someone is not at the office not to pair. You have Jira to have your specs and all your issues if you want. I even have remotely working with Whiteboard. Basically, the guy on the office would pick up the card, would show to the webcam and say, hey, David, this is a task that we are going to do. I already talked to someone, and this is A, B, and C that is going to be done. So it works fine. And just for you to have an idea, back in the London office, we had a colleague, his name was Benoit, and he was in London, then he got tired, and he went back to Paris. And the team really loved the guy. He was a Java guru. So what we did was, okay, so since we are pairing, you're going to, every single day from Monday to Friday, to remotely work from Paris to the office in London. So basically what we did was, we had a laptop. He was projecting himself in the laptop, and people were working with him. And even in the meetings, we just grab the laptop and we take him to the meetings. True story. I'm not making this up. And it worked, okay? So it's perfectly fine. Remotely works. What about estimations? Are estimations affected or not? Yes, definitely. If you have one man, let's say, okay, this task is going to take like 3 days, one the guy doing, all your estimations should be pair days, okay? So because it's a pair that is working, probably going to have more stuff done quickly. Maybe not. It really depends on the sort of quality of code that you're making. What about size and length of tasks? One thing that I saw on my team was, okay, so this is just like a kind of a configuration on the Tomcat, so that we don't need to pair for this one. I can do it like in just 5 minutes. In my perspective, don't do that stuff. Pair all the time, because if someone really knows the configuration of Tomcat, if you're doing the 2 guys doing the same stuff, they both are going to learn. Or one guy already knows and the other guy is going to learn. Because if that guy is not in the office someday, no one will know how to configure a Tomcat. This is an example. So in my perspective, regardless of the task being quite small or that big, you should pair all the time, period. Is it expensive? Okay, so this one is for the managers, because usually what people think is, okay, so if I'm pairing, I'm paying twice the money for the same amount of work. It's like the first thing that every manager thinks about. But the thing here is, okay, that perspective is valid, obviously, but if you're actually making less bugs, you're not having that much of technical debt, and people are more engaged and having fun, more committed, it's not expensive, okay? It's not about just the money and the velocity that you can actually put on the writing code. It's not about that stuff. So obviously the team will be much more happy doing pair programming, at least from what I saw. So yes, this is not that expensive. The other thing that asked me is, okay, so is it just for mature teams who are not ready enough for that stuff? What I usually say is, okay, do you dress up like a Power Ranger at work? Probably not, right? So you're not immature, you can go for it. Don't use it as an excuse, because I heard that stuff a lot, like, okay, we are not ready yet for that sort of stuff. It's not true. You just need to go and do it. You'll see that it works just fine. Does it scale? Yes. Scales perfectly. So as you can see, you rotate the role multiple times a day. You rotate the pair multiple times a week. And you can actually, if you have more teams doing the same stuff, you can rotate team members. In London, we call that stuff the boomerang, that is sending someone to another team while receiving someone back. So it scales just fine. You can have multiple teams doing pair programming. Well, now, companies that actually do it. Here in Portugal, I just know of Custo Justo, although I heard that one or two more companies actually do pair programming. And then the majority of the companies that you see here, some of them quite well known, like Twitter, they are basically from the UK and the US. So you have a lot of them. eBay does that stuff, Sky does that stuff, Orange, Groupon. Tons of them are pair programming. So what basically I want to show with this slide is, sometimes people say, oh no, my team is too, let's say my company is too big, or my company is too small, so we cannot do pair programming. That's not true. You have small companies like 2 Degrees Network doing that stuff, and you also have BSkyB, that is a huge company in the UK doing that stuff. So you have big companies, small companies, young companies, old companies doing it. It's not an issue here, the size of the company, to do pair programming. So what about jobs? Do people search for pair programming jobs? Yes, I done this silly search on Careers 2.0 by Stack Overflow, and I found 428 jobs. And I said, okay, I don't know if this is a lot, it's not that much. Let me check. So I searched for tons of jobs at the same day. Okay, this is what back in January when I knew that my talk was going to be approved. And as you can see, the biggest result that I got was actually from pair programming. So this, basically what I want to show you with this is people outside Portugal are really giving value to pair programming. So if you're thinking to going abroad, this is something really, really good for you if you already have experience pair programming. Well, we have tons of people talking about pair programming. So this is the guy that actually had the idea, Kent Beck, with the help of Ron Jeffries. Then you have some gurus over here. This guy, this lady does some investigation. This guy teaches the Scrum courses here in Portugal. I'm a fan also, and maybe you will be as well. I don't know. So, common pitfalls. What are the mistakes that people do when they are pair programming? So first of all, remember one thing, you should be hygienic, okay? So you should definitely have a shower, because if you're working with someone next to you, you don't want to smell, okay? So that is the first point that you should never forget. Be social. Remember one thing, you're working with someone, so you kind of should get along to discuss a lot of stuff. Probably not football, at least not from yesterday's results. But, but you should be social. You should be willing to receive feedback. You should be willing to teach. You should be tolerant. You should be patient. And then are two really important things that I think that it makes the difference when you're in a team that pair programs. Well, the first one is the no asshole rule at the office. So basically, the no asshole rule at the office is you shouldn't ever allow bullying inside your team. Because when you're working alone, it's not that positive to have someone pushing people around and being quite aggressive, though, so that doesn't work that well. But when you're pairing, it gets much worse, because then people start getting afraid. They are not going to review code. The driver navigator thing won't work at all. So you should never allow assholing or bullying at the office. And the other thing is, if you're pair programming, you should allow the team to participate when you're going to choose someone new to arrive in the recruiting process. Because one thing is to someone to have a really good technical background, but if he sucks at pairing, it's not going to be a perfect fit in your team. So besides all that questions that people do in the interviews, like are you good in Java, in Node, in this and that, blah, 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 you should also grab that guy, grab someone from your team and say, okay, now for 1 hour, you two are going to pair. And then ask the guy from your team his opinion about that person. Okay, was he good pairing? Did he talk enough? Were you communicating? Is he open to receive feedback, or he was too close? So there are really important stuff that you guys should consider when you're recruiting someone. So how to start? Let's say that by some reason you're really up to start pair programming. How can you arrive at the office and start? Well, basically you just have two scenarios, okay? You can start slow, a pilot, just say pair in the mornings, pair 2 days a week, just grab a team and that team pairs and the rest doesn't pair, just to make sure you have some sort of comparison. Or basically you can go all the way. You don't give a damn, so just talk to your colleagues, try to convince them to do pair programming, and just do it. Remember one thing, there is nothing bad that can actually come out of that stuff. You're pairing, let's say, for 1 month or two. If it simply doesn't work, go back to your previous formula. That's it. You're not like throwing code away. You're not wasting your time. Just give it a shot and see how it goes. Just the thing is, don't give up at the first time. Obviously, you're going to need to learn how to pair effectively, and people need to grow into the idea. But just go for it. Don't use lame excuses to not do this stuff. So we're about to end. So wrapping up, pair programming, it's a pretty cool practice. Like I told you, just need 1 workstation, 2 guys. The amount of monitors, keyboards, all that, it's completely optional. It's really up to you to understand the best configuration. It's not for everyone. It really is it brings a lot of benefits, just like I told you. Don't allow bullying inside your team, because otherwise pair programming won't work for sure. And that's it. And don't forget about the pitfalls, and have a shower if you're pair programming. That's it. Thanks. Questions? Perguntas?
Hi. Do you have any measures about the productivity win? Because you have 2 people on the same task, the task will be faster. But you have 2 people on the same task, you are only doing 1 task. As a benefit, there will be lesser bugs, there will be lesser tasks, right? So are there any measures?
Yeah, you have. So when I show the scholars, if you search for Laurie Williams and pair programming studies, you'll find people actually investigate that and try to measure the pros and cons. So if you can Google it, you'll see that. Although, so when you're pairing, you don't lose you don't cut to half let's say the speed that you're producing code. So it's never half. So it's not like a direct hit. It's kind of in the midterm, and then you have the advantage. Obviously, it's not like something completely certain, but you'll have less bugs, technical debt, and all that sort of stuff extra. So if you search it online, you'll find tons of studies about that. I didn't brought them. Okay. Cool.
Cool.
What about debugging? What if your project has a problem and you know you have to dive into the codes, go step by step? Is it beneficial to have 2 heads, each thinking about the problem, what is going wrong? Or is it preferable in those situations to just have 1 person look at it and maybe call someone for opinions later?
Well, I'm just going to talk about my experience. So in my experience, we just removed the workstations. So we had 8 guys on the team, we just had 4 computers, so we would never work alone. Obviously, if, let's say, someone went to the bathroom or something like that, or if it was a really small task and someone arrived early in the office, you had situations when we just had 1 person working on some task, but typically we just have 2 guys. So answering your question, we always had 2 guys, basically, regardless of being debugging, finding a bug. Because remember one thing, even let's say by some reason it's legacy code, and you have like the senior guy and he knows exactly what to do. If you're pairing with someone, that guy that is pairing is going to learn as well. So, okay, he's not probably going to be that fast fixing that stuff, because he's going to say, look, now we are going to here, and he's going to kind of walk through the other guy. So it's not going to be that fast, but that guy is going to learn. Obviously, if it's an issue in live, then it's like every man for himself. It's like we just need to fix it, that's it. But besides that, you should pair, because it's quite cool to teach the new guys. And if like I told you, if the senior is out sick or at holidays, you really want someone to know exactly how to do it again, if by some reason that debugging happens in the same area of code. So you should pair, definitely. Okay.
In my experience in my team, on tasks like designing software and debugging, for example, where two people are not, only one of them is going to be using the computer, so we split and then we come back. So we time box We say, well, let's debug this for 20 minutes and see what we can find. That's. Yeah, exactly. So we converge later and we see the best solution for that.
Yeah, the thing is, there is no secret formula. It's kind of, every single team should kind of try to understand how it works the best, and that's it. Yeah, that's right. You don't have right and wrong when you're pairing.
How would you handle regular estimates versus pair estimates?
It's more or less the same. So let's say you have a task, and someone say, oh, okay, so it's one guy, he's going to work for 3 days, so you have 3 days or X amount of points. When you're pairing, you're saying, okay, so we are pairing, so this task is going to take what, 1 day, usually 1 day and a half, and just round it up. Like say, okay, so this is like 2 pair days.
Okay.
That's it, you know? Yeah.
So imagine that you have 2 people pairing up who are trying to solve a problem,
Yep.
and one of them finds a solution but has to use a really weird algorithm or some data structure, and the other guy can't keep up and needs to read an article for an hour or so before he can really understand what's going on in the code. What do you think that should be done? Should the person that knows the solution try to help for the next hour so that both get to an agreement? Should they switch the pair for that task in particular?
Not really. So you should not switch just because of that task, because the guy that is going to be pulled out of the pair is not going to be feel that good because, okay, I could not be up to the task, so I'm going to kill myself in a couple of hours. So you should not do that sort of stuff. Usually, if you don't need someone to be like the manager of the other guy to impose an idea. Let's say I'm really junior, you're really senior. We have some sort of an issue, and you say, okay, I know exactly how to tackle this, and you start doing it and kind of start to explain it like, okay, so I'm going to this class, I'm going to change this and that. If I'm more junior, I'm just going to go along and believe, okay, he knows exactly what he's doing. And if you're experienced enough in pairing, you're going to speak while you're doing that stuff, and I'll just learn that. So the idea here is, obviously it's a little bit tricky to try to make sure that we are both in agreement how the task should be handled. But what I usually see is when you have some guy more senior than the other, the junior tends to go along.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Cool.